On behalf of Gail Borden Public Library and the Elgin Poet Laureate Project, I welcome you to our program celebrating Women's History Month. I'm Gareth Mann, Elgin's current Poet Laureate, and I'm delighted to be with you tonight to take you on a poetic journey, exploring the work of a few noted poets from the past, as well as poems from the present written by our own Elgin women. Each poem you will hear this evening expresses part of a woman's unique vision. I will begin by reading a poem from my own history as a poet, dating from 1975, which was the year that I first became serious about writing poetry. Oh Muse, you come to me like a rush of frozen wind, sweeping my cheeks until they burn and turn red and swollen. You pierce my barren spirit when I least expect relief from months of empty pages and blank thoughts. I shiver with pain as my frostbitten fingers tap on ice cube keys. Yet, in this most chilling of winters, I grow warm, standing naked in the snow. Marcia Gutierrez, first and foremost a visual artist with photography being her primary medium, she is a gifted bilingual storyteller and has been writing poetry for several years, becoming a regular at our monthly poetry writing group here at Gail Borden. She will be sharing two poems she discovered by two female poets of the past, and then she will read poems by Sarah Teasdale.
Hello. My first poem is by Rosalia de Castro, 1837 to 1885. She was born in Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, Spain, and she began composing poetry when she was 11 years old. With the encouragement of her husband, she published her first book in 1857 using her name, which was not done in those days for women. In 1863, she published a collection of poetry in her native language, Gallego, which also was something unheard of in Spain. Her poems reflect the lives of the Galician people and nature, and she is revered even today, they also have a statue of her. This is translated by me from Spanish. They say that the plants do not speak, nor the brooks, nor the birds, nor the waves with their roar, nor with the brilliance of the stars, so they say. But one cannot be sure, for always when I go by, they whisper about me and say, ah, there goes the mad woman dreaming of the everlasting springtime of life in the fields. And yet soon, very soon, her hair will turn gray, and she sees, trembling, numb, that the frost covers the meadow. There are gray hairs in my head, and there is frost in the meadows, but I continue dreaming, poor incurable sleepwalker, with the eternal spring of life that goes out and the perennial freshness of the fields and souls. Although some wither, and although others burn, stars and fountains and flowers will not murmur of my dreams. Without them, neither can one admire, nor can one live without them.
Thank you.
Yosano Akiko, 1887 to 1942, was a Japanese author, poet, feminist, pacifist, and social reformer. Her poetry followed the tanka form of poetry, 32 beats or syllables written in one long line in Japanese tradition. In the Western tradition, it has 5 lines with 5, 7, 5, 7, 7 beats. Her poetry was rather unconventional for a woman of her time. The men didn't like it. And changed the perception of women to a persona more liberated and powerful. The mountain-moving day is coming. I say so, yet others doubt. Only a while the mountain sleeps. In the past, all mountains moved in fire. Yet you may not believe it, O man, this alone believe. All sleeping women now will wake and move. Sarah Trevor Teasdale, 1884-1933. She was originally from St. Louis. She frequently traveled to Chicago, where she became part of the circle surrounding Poetry magazine. She published her first volume of verse in 1907 with 2 more collaborations in 1911 and 1915. In 1914, she moved with her new husband to New York City. She won the Columbia University Poetry Society Prize, which became the Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1916, and the Poetry Society of America's Prize in 1918 for her volume, Love Songs. She published 3 more volumes of poetry during her lifetime, the last one in 1930. After her divorce in 1929, she lived the rest of her life as a semi-invalid, weakened from a difficult bout with pneumonia. Teasdale died by suicide on January 29, 1933. Her final collection appeared posthumously that same year. She wrote in the lyric style of poetry. Some of her work anticipated modern feminist verse and the intimate autobiographical style known as confessional poetry. She associated moral and spiritual beauty with the harmonies of the natural world. Advice to a girl. No one worth possessing can be quite possessed. Lay that in your heart, my young, angry dear. This truth, this hard and precious stone, lay it on your hot cheek, let it hide your tear. Hold it like a crystal when you are alone, and gaze in the depths of the icy stone. Long, look long, and you will be blessed. No one worth possessing can be quite possessed.
True that.
A maiden. Oh, if I were the velvet rose upon the red rose vine, I'd climb to touch his window and make his casement fine. If I were the little bird that twitters on the tree, all day I'd sing my love for him till he should hearken me. But since I am a maiden, I go with downcast eyes, and he will never hear the songs that he has turned to sighs. And since I am a maiden, my love will never know that I could kiss him with the mouth more red than roses blow. Wild asters. In the spring, I asked the daisies if his words were true, and the clever, clear-eyed daisies always knew. Now the fields are brown and barren, bitter autumn blows, and of all I shall not care. When I am dead and over me bright April shakes out her rain-drenched hair, though you shall lean above me broken-hearted, I shall not care. I shall have peace as leafy trees are peaceful, when rain bends down the bough, and I shall be more silent and cold-hearted than you are now. Like barley bending. Like barley bending in the low fields by the sea, singing in hard wind ceaselessly. Like barley bending and rising again, so would I unbroken rise from pain. So would I softly, day long, night long, change my sorrow into song. And then of these that I've read, this last one here is my favorite. Meadowlarks. In the silver light after a storm, under dripping boughs of bright new green, I take the low path to hear the meadowlarks, alone and high-hearted as if I were a queen. What have I to fear in life or death, who have known three things: the kiss in the night, the white flying joy when a song is born, and meadowlarks whistling in silver light.
Mm. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. Our next major poet from the past will be Edna St. Vincent Millay. I became exposed to Millay in high school, and I have had a passion for her work ever since. Born in Rockland, Maine in 1892, the eldest of three daughters, all raised by their mother, Cora, a working nurse and enthusiast of the arts, Millay read and wrote voraciously throughout her childhood, and she was recognized from her earliest years for both her intelligence and her willful spirit. As she grew up, Edna St. Vincent Millay would be recognized as a truly independent woman, becoming the first woman to win a Pulitzer Prize for poetry, a vocal feminist, an activist, and openly bisexual. Millay was a renowned social figure in New York City during the Roaring '20s and beyond. Her poetry was rather traditional in form, but adventurous in content. A nature mysticism pervades much of her work. But Millay's popularity as a poet had at least as much to do with her persona. She was known for her riveting readings and performances, her progressive political stances, and her embodiment and description of new kinds of female experience and expression. Millay married Eugène Boissevin in 1923, and the two were together for 26 years. He did not expect domesticity of his wife, but was willing to devote himself to the development of her talents, giving up his own pursuits to manage Millay's literary career, setting up the readings and public appearances for which Millay grew famous. First one, spring. To what purpose, April, do you return again? Beauty is not enough. You can no longer quiet me with the redness of little leaves opening stickily. I know what I know. The sun is hot on my neck as I observe the spikes of the crocus. The smell of the earth is good. It is apparent that there is no death. But what does that signify? Not only underground are the brains of men eaten by maggots. Life in itself is nothing. An empty cup, a flight of uncarpeted stairs. It is not enough that yearly down this hill, April comes like an idiot, babbling and strewing flowers. Recuerdo. We were very tired, we were very merry, we had gone back and forth all night on the ferry. It was bare and bright and smelled like a stable, but we looked into a fire. We leaned across a table. We lay on a hilltop underneath the moon, and the whistles kept blowing, and the dawn came soon. We were very tired, we were very merry, we had gone back and forth all night on the ferry. And you ate an apple, and I ate a pear, from a dozen each we had bought somewhere. And the sky went wan, and the wind came cold, and the sun rose dripping, a bucket full of gold. We were very tired, we were very merry, we had gone back and forth all night on the ferry. We hailed, "Good morrow, mother," to a shawl-covered head, and bought a morning paper, which neither of us read. And she wept, "God bless you," for the apples and pears, and we gave her all our money, but our subway fares. Afternoon on a hill. I will be the gladdest thing under the sun. I will touch 100 flowers and not pick one. I will look at cliffs and clouds with quiet eyes, watch the wind bow down the grass, and the grass rise. And when lights begin to show up from town, I will mark which one is mine, and then start down. Now, I particularly love her sonnets, and I'm going to read a couple of those. Love is not all. Love is not all. It is not meat, nor drink, nor slumber, nor a roof against the rain, nor yet a floating spar to men that sink and rise and sink and rise and sink again. Love cannot fill the thickened lung with breath, nor clean the blood, nor set a fractured bone. Yet many a man is making friends with death, even as I speak, for lack of love alone. It well may be that in a difficult hour, pinned down by pain and moaning for release, or nagged by want past resolution's power, I might be driven to sell your love for peace, or trade the memory of this night for food. It well may be. I do not think I would. Thou art not lovelier than lilacs. Thou art not lovelier than lilacs, no, nor honeysuckle. Thou art not more fair than small white single poppies. I can bear thy beauty, though I bend before thee, though from left to right, not knowing where to go, I turn my troubled eyes, nor here nor there find any refuge from thee. Yet I swear, so has it been with mist, with moonlight so, like him who day by day unto his draught of delicate poison adds him one drop more, till he may drink unharmed the death of 10. Even so, inured to beauty, who have quaffed each hour more deeply than the hour before, I drink and live what has destroyed some men. I, being born a woman and distressed. I, being born a woman and distressed by all the needs and notions of my kind, am urged by your propinquity to find your person fair, and feel a certain zest to bear your body's weight upon my breast. So subtly is the fume of life designed to clarify the pulse and cloud the mind, and leave me once again undone, possessed. Think not for this, however, the poor treason of my stout blood against my staggering brain. I shall remember you with love, or season my scorn with pity. Let me make it plain. I find that there's a frenzied, insufficient reason for conversation when we meet again. This last poem is not a sonnet, but it's one you've probably heard many, many times. First fig. My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But all my foes and all my friends, it gives a lovely light. So that's the end of the lay. The last poet from the past presented will be Dorothy Parker, read by Joy Winter-Bang. Joy's experience as an actress makes her an ideal participant in our program today. A native New Yorker, Joy wound up in Minnesota after her time acting in Hollywood. She moved to Elgin in 2013 and has rapidly become part of the community, and certainly our poetry communities. Joy?
And certainly the Gail Borden line.
I'm Joy, and Gareth wrote this sort of intro. Dorothy Parker, 1893 to 1967. So I was 20 when she passed. She was born in Manhattan, and in her lifetime she was known for her sharp wit and a perceptive commentary about contemporary America. She attended the Blessed Sacrament Convent School in New York City, and also a finishing school in New Jersey, but she never received a high school diploma. She sold her first poem to Vanity Fair in 1914, and her career took off from there as both a writer and as a theater critic. She was a member of the board of editors at the New Yorker magazine, my favorite magazine, when it was founded in 1925, and she frequently contributed short poems to its pages. There's a lot of power dynamics in her poetry, especially concerning gender. Some people dismissed her poetry as light verse, but these incisive poems pulled apart the fabric of American society. In 1934, Parker moved to Hollywood with her second husband, Alan Campbell, and together they worked as screenwriters. It's rather amazing that this woman with so little formal education was nominated for several Academy Awards for screenwriting. While in Hollywood, she became involved in left-wing politics and raising money for progressive causes. Before her death in 1967, she willed most of her estate to Martin Luther King Jr., and it passed to the NAACP when King was assassinated. It was a good bio. I only knew tidbits like that her husband committed suicide, and that she was part of the Algonquin Round Table. But I'd like to start with one of her poems called Love Song. My own dear love, he's strong and bold, and he cares not what comes after. His words ring sweet as a chime of gold, and his eyes are lit with laughter. He's jubilant as a flag unfurled. Oh, a girl, she'd not forget him. My own dear love, he's all my world, and I wish I'd never met him. My love, he's mad, and my love, he's fleet, and a wild young wood thing bore him. The ways are fair to his roaming feet, and the skies are sunlit for him. As sharply sweet to my heart he seems as the fragrance of acacia. My own dear love, he's all my dreams, and I wish I were in Asia. My love runs by like a day in June, and he makes no friends of sorrows. He'll tread his galloping rigadoon in the pathway of the morrows. He'll live his days where the sunbeams start, nor could storm or wind uproot him. My own dear love, he is all my heart, and I wish somebody'd shoot him. One perfect rose. A single flower he sent me since we met. All tenderly his messages he chose. Deep-hearted, pure, with scented dew still wet, one perfect rose. I knew the language of the flower. My fragile leaves, it said, his heart enclose. Love long has taken for his amulet one perfect rose. Why is it no one ever sent me yet one perfect limousine, do you suppose? Oh no, it's always just my luck to get one perfect rose. She had a heck of a sense of humor. Okay. Next one is titled Indian Summer. In youth, it was a way I had to do my best to please and change with every passing lad to suit his theories. But now I know the things I know and do the things I do, and if you do not like me so, to hell my love with you. Interview by Dorothy Parker. This is kind of a cool one. The ladies men admire, I've heard, would shudder at a wicked word. Their candle gives a single light. They'd rather stay at home at night. They do not keep awake till 3, nor read erotic poetry. They never sanction the impure, nor recognize an overture. They shrink from powders and from paints. So far, I've had no complaints. Superfluous advice. Should they whisper false of you? Never trouble to deny. Should the words they say be true? Weep and storm and swear they lie. Unfortunate coincidence. By the time you swear you're his, shivering and sighing, and he vows his passion is infinite, undying, lady, make a note of this. One of you is lying. This one's called Social Note. She's pretty... Lady, should you meet one whose ways are all discreet, one who murmurs that his wife is the lodestar of his life, one who keeps assuring you that he never was untrue, never loved another one, lady, better run. Surprise. My heart went fluttering with fear, lest you should go and leave me here, to beat my breast and rock my head and stretch me sleepless on my bed. Ah, clear they see and true they say that one shall weep and one shall stray, for such is love's unvarying law. I never thought, I never saw, that I should be the first to go. How pleasant that it happened so. Oh, lastly, this is the first poem I ever heard of hers, and I was probably 14, and my mother read it to me. A little young to learn about this, but it's called Residue. Razors pain you, rivers are damp, acids stain you, and drugs cause cramp. Guns aren't lawful, nooses give. Gas smells awful, might as well live. First thing I heard about suicide as a child.
You could use that lighthearted Dorothy Parker quickly. It's nice to hear everybody laughing. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth King, who's going to begin the second part of our program. She will be reading 2 poems about the Gifford family, well-known figures in Elgin's history. Elizabeth's day job in the corporate world is demanding and exacting, so poetry is a welcome outlet. And Elizabeth, she meets every poetic challenge with gusto. She carries a notebook with her at all times, her mind always working on new ideas for poems. The 2 poems she will be sharing tonight took her out of her comfort zone as she worked tirelessly to capture Elgin's history. Elizabeth? Thank you, Gareth.
Pioneer Girl, the story of young Caroline Gifford. Under the light of the setting sun, upon the seat of an old oak wagon, propped up high, transfixed by golden, swaying prairie grass. I gaze at the red-winged blackbirds, perched on the bright red cardinal flowers. We study each other as I travel westward, towards our new log cabin. I must be the first little 8-year-old pioneer girl they've ever seen. I remember last winter how Uncle Hezekiah explored the free-flowing Fox River. And I recall how fast he came home, told Mama, Papa, Aunt Mary Jane, in just a few weeks the farms were sold. I often dreamt about the quiet February morning when the Gifford women waved goodbye as our two heroes headed west to the prairie state, horse-drawn wagons in tow. Waiting, praying, months with no news. From February through April, or was it May? It seemed a letter would never come. When it finally came, Aunt Mary Jane headed west, filled with joy. Her log cabin home was ready. But Papa's sisters, Experience, Susan, Ruth, Louisa, and Harriet, along with me, Mama, little Lucy, tiny Sarah, and the boys, Fulton and James, we had to wait. Aunt Mary Jane wrote to us. Her letters thrilled us with tales about Indians who came unexpectedly, looking for flour and dry goods in trade. It was August when Papa came for us. Mama, a stalwart, tiny woman, barely taller than I am, packed the whole house with 5 children in tow in just a couple days. Up through the winding Erie Canal, then a sailing ship to Chicago. 3 Great Lakes looked like the ocean. The 4-week trip was exciting and fearful. Storms and waves tossed the ship. The wind whistled through the sails. The rigging rattled and moaned, just as though we were at sea. We had to watch the little ones lest they fall overboard. It was such a relief to see Uncle Hezekiah waiting on shore in Chicago. Mounting our wagons, we headed west, chasing the September sunset. One good look at Fort Dearborn's fearful stockade was a somber reminder of where we were. I looked at the setting sun once more and onward through the prairie grass I traveled, the sunflowers and asters urging me on. Waving goodbye to the red-winged blackbirds, I could finally see the sun-glint river. Moments later, we pulled up with a flourish at Uncle Hezekiah's log cabin. Aunt Mary Jane ran out to greet us, glowing with joy, as bright and cheery as the roaring fire behind her. I knew we were home. Home in Elgin. Ladies of the prairie, the Gifford women in Elgin. The Gifford women, 4 sisters, 3 wives, and 3 daughters, gallantly headed west, families and belongings in tow, called by a fertile prairie ground. There was newly settled Elgin to be found. Under the split oak shingle roofs, aglow with the joy of hope, smiling as brightly as the firelight in the hearth. Family evenings recounting the adventures of the day. Imagine Aunt Mary Jane recite the moment a group of natives entered her cabin uninvited, bravely shoving one back as he tried to help himself to items without trading. Oh, how the others laughed. Oh, how she sighed with relief. Then there was Aunt Harriet, who began Sunday school, teaching the golden rule. She and Aunt Experience taught in a settler's cabin until a school was built. Committed to their career, Elgin schools began expanding, improving, transitioning. After the Civil War, their school saw 1,500 students enroll. Former contraband slaves included, now free Elgin residents. The women were resourceful, but pleased when stores opened. 1836 brought general stores, then blacksmiths, doctors, lawyers, tradesmen. Soon the stagecoach came, the Elgin House Hotel opened, known for its magnificence, luxury, and opulence. Mary Jane couldn't believe it. Seasons changed, Elgin grew, love was found, wedding banns published. Louisa married a doctor. Ruth married a farmer. Susan married an Elgin clothier. Small blessings were proudly announced, bringing more joy, more happiness, until the fateful day when bilious fever came to Elgin. All the women nursed their families, some even refugeed to Wisconsin, but they could not outrun the pestilence. Laura Gifford lost 2 of her children, Miss Lucy and 6-year-old Dexter. Health returned and Elgin flourished. Young girls, once pioneer children, were now lovely young women. Our young pioneer girl, Caroline Gifford, found love and married a banker. In 1850, even the train came to Elgin. The women's excitement was electric, but elation was tempered by tragedy. Illness returned. The honorable, hardworking, inventive man who brought them all west was gone. For the Gifford women, this was another reminder of the beginnings and endings all women must face. Laura Gifford outlived her husband James by 20 years.
Great history.
I might add that I put out the challenge to all my poets to please write something about a woman in Elgin's history, and
Elizabeth Rose did.
Elizabeth took the bait. Did a wonderful job.
Yeah, really.
Okay, this is a poem that I wrote about, called Watch Factory Women. They came, leaving farms and small towns behind, seeking a new life and independence. These young women came to face the unknown, a chance to make their way in the world. Elgin was a big city. Bright lights, department stores, votable theaters. Wide-eyed and eager for adventure, stepping down from the train with hopeful expectations, what would they find? Gainful employment at the Elgin National Watch Factory. Clean work, a job well suited for women, sitting all day, wearing 2 petticoats, their dresses brushing the floor. With nimble fingers, these single women joined the ranks, working side by side with married women, proud of having 2 income families, their dream, buying a home, becoming reality. Making less than their male counterparts, much valued employees, grateful for opportunity. Women made watches of world renown, leaving their legacy in Elgin town. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Susan Milbourne. Susan, excuse me, grew up in Kansas, but has been living in the Chicago area for about 20 years. Poetry and writing have been a constant companion throughout the last 2.5 decades, often bringing solace and joy when day-to-day life was difficult. This is her first formal presentation of her work in about 20 years. We welcome Susan to Elgin's poetry community with open arms.
I have 2, and I'm just gonna go right in. The first one, bombshell. All the eggs a female carries in her life are present on the day she is born, are present while she is growing inside of her mother, who was once coming out of her mother, whole too. From that time of entry, we lose parts of ourselves in many small deaths. The fear of not being enough because our kind of beauty isn't valued, or because we have voices that are sometimes too loud. Sometimes we dress wrong, or we're asking for attention we did not seek. We teach girls to shrink themselves, to make themselves smaller. This despite being the biggest oceans in all of history. Her story. We are the vessels, the water and the wind, though it was once illegal for us to sail, or at least very bad luck upon the sea. There have been so many lies that we have ingested, regurgitated, and purged to ourselves, at each other, in bathrooms after too many drinks gossiping, or when a man has convinced us our only power has been given by his favor alone. Empowered women empower women, and so the sea is here with us, always has been. Within the curves of our hips, the fatty tissues of our breasts, we are the gatekeepers, we are the ekati, guarding the doors as they open betwixt our legs. We are feared for the power and the mystery we walk in, and so it has been easier to keep us from ourselves by way of doubt, fear, shame, embarrassment, stigma. Luckily though, we have mouths. We have 8 hands and gray stuff between our ears. So shrinking is no longer in fashion. So go forth then and be that fragile thing, not like the flower or porcelain. Rather, be fragile like a bomb.
That's a really nice.
This one, I recently reread Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale, and it had a visceral response, and this is what came of that. It's called Skin. Maybe it's because I've read Atwood. Maybe it's because stuffy men chose, oh, irony of ironies, Dobbs. Maybe it's because I have been fondled on trains, unasked or considered, that I am no longer at ease in my skin, have been uneasy in my skin. I have worn it always, and so it fits and feels comfortable, but not safe, never safe. Rather, it is a commodity, it is object, it is a means to an end, it is not part of me. Offred said that her body was dissociated from her, and I felt deeply, me too. The cold, flat letdown of just what society is now willing to do with so many voices, but is unable to accept accountability for. The inert progress it refuses to migrate, to allow. I am unsafe in my skin. My daughter is unsafe in hers. How small and empty the fear carves as I walk with my feet, write with my hand, speak with my voice. It is not me, it is separate. We are only roommates, sharing a home surrounded by weeds, who will one day overtake the land on which we've built our guise of safety and choice. But then, all things return to nature eventually.
Deborah Nowak has been attending the monthly poetry writing group at Gail Borden for several years. A retired psychiatric nurse, Deb has tremendous insight and sensitivity, which is reflected in her poetry. I will be reading for her this evening. Embroidery hoops. There were wooden embroidery hoops my grandma bought at Kresge's for 19 cents each. 2 bamboo circles that snapped together and came apart. She taught us to put the white linen handkerchief stamped with the flower outline and border patterns into the hoops. We chose the colors of silk thread and learned life has mistakes, but it is still beautiful. Knots are hard, but worth it. Satin stitches take a long time to make things smooth, and love, stitched on the soul, lasts forever. This is another one of her poems. It's called Watching an Old Movie. Watching an old movie about 2 elderly sisters living alone on the coast of Maine, I felt the tears slide down my cheeks before I realized I was weeping. Looking at Lillian Gish at 92, her hair swept up on the top of her head in a bun, her wrinkle-wrapped eyes still so blue, frail shoulders draped in a frayed cardigan sweater. She stepped carefully out of the farmhouse's wooden screen door and made her way carefully towards the bluff above the rock-strewn shore. She stopped to snip a beach rose with a pair of old tin snips, held it to her nose and sniffed, stood peering out to sea for a little while, watching for the whales that used to come in August. I'm not sure how she stood there, buffeted by the winds off the ocean, tiny and bird fragile as she was. But when she looked off in the distance, the camera caught the forget-me-not blue of her hopeful eyes, unwilling to give up on what she loved, no matter what the odds. It was my mother's beautiful blue eyes I saw there in the broken days before she died, and it was I who shattered. Now we will hear from Marcia Gutierrez reading one of her own poems.
Mothers are a child's first teacher. And when my mother passed a year ago, I started thinking about all the things she taught me in my life. And three things came back very powerfully. One was music, the other one was the textile arts, and the third was what I learned in her garden. Remembering Mother's garden. A cluster of purple flowers from an island far away rattle as they are shaken by a small hand. The scent of roses fills the nostrils in colors of orange, yellow, pink, red, and white. A small bush holds fruit from a tropical land. Small and green and soft, the tangy juice flows down a small chin. Red, petalless flowers shaped like bottle brushes hum loudly from the bees that find joy in its form. Thick, plump leaves flow down from a hanging basket. Small pink flowers at the end, dripping a thick drop of nectar for a small finger to catch. This is what is remembered in a child's mind as the years move forward.
Another talented poet from the monthly writing group is Catherine Long. Kathy taught elementary school for many years in U46 and loved every minute. In retirement, she's rediscovered her love of writing and of poetry in particular. She's given us permission to share her poem about a beloved aunt, and Joy will be reading for Catherine this evening.
Irene, not a spinster, not an old maid, but an unmarried woman, a whole tiny lady, sure and complete. There was no missing piece. She traveled the world with cousins and friends, filling shelves with mementos, labeled country and year. A piano accompanist for symphonies and for choirs, taking lessons into her 70s, learned to drive, bought a car at 65, with braces on her teeth. Brave enough to wear trousers under her fur, set finest china and delicate sweets for the tea parties everyone favored. Her date book was always full. Died at 95, with life's treasures tucked away. Delicates for her hope trains. Expert hardinger not quite complete. 2 crackers in wax paper, 4 beans in a cup, lots of butter and pickled beets, a high school ring, ivory hairbrush and mirror, photo albums, black pages with white ink, violets in the window, her Bible fully worn, an apron used and torn. Bits of a lifetime long and well-lived. Don't call her a spinster, not an old maid, a lady perfect for her time.
Here's a poem that I wrote recently. It's called The Fabric of My Life. The fabric of my life varies from day to day. Sometimes like pale chiffon, sheer and blowing in the wind. Sometimes soft silk, light and fluid. fabric of my life changes as I change, from poplin to calico to corduroy to velvet. Each type of fabric has its purpose, and each time my fabric transforms, I feel its weight and texture. From taffeta and satin to sturdy cotton to warm wool, I feel it changing, and it is beyond my control. I must let it be, this fabric of my life. I cannot fight it. I must embrace it and let each material cover me as I make my way. I don't want heavy upholstery to weigh me down or scratchy burlap to leave red marks on my skin. And yet, it's not for me to say how long each fabric will stay, when each fabric will go away. It's not for me to know or understand. I must be receptive as I move from comfort to discomfort, from wonder to weariness, letting the sensations of each cloth seep into my being, claiming my body and my mind. So now we have a special poem we're going to do. It's by a man. And his name is Edward Herdrich, and he couldn't be with us tonight, but he saw us rehearsing and he was really happy. So we'll just take it away. So Joy and Marsha are going to help me read this one. A battle started long ago, don't you know? Though history written by those who held the pen, men. And so, though many voices tried wallstone craft on one side of the pond, fuller, later voice keeping the bond, rational, intellectual, spiritual arguments denied at that time and still today, standing up, stepping out to say, more than chattel, won't forget, suffragettes, not done yet.
Turn of the century to some way back, when England and Ireland voices ignored by men. Peaceful protests keeping each other strong, over time and patience gone wrong. WSPU actions gone awry. Method cannot be, cause cannot deny. At that time and yet still today, standing up, stepping out to say, the vote deserved and more needs yet. Suffragettes,
Not done yet. Not so distant past, change is still not made to last. Malala shot for daring to say equal education. Michelle from the White House echoed the call, while some steps made, some cliches won't fade. Equity, equality, transparency, uncertain at that time and yet still today. Standing up, stepping out to say the vote deserved and more needs set. Suffragettes, not done yet.
Closer to today, looked for more to come this way. An election brought dismay, Oval Office stray, protesting words of red. Stand up and say, me too. In those halls, man voices, just name three. Kamala, Tammy, especially RBG. Through time, we have been sage. We have felt rage from home to wage, the same gauge. At that time and yet still today, standing up, stepping out to say the vote deserved and more needs set. Suffragettes,
Not done yet.
So that's the last poem of our evening. We included Ed's poem because it was fantastic and dealt with history, but also because here's a man who respects women.
It's possible.
And that is pretty cool. He's written some other poems that he said, well, how about this one? How about that one? But seriously, we're really delighted that we could include it, and thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate your attendance.
coming up, there will be Poetry Alive, and that will be on the 26th of April. And let's see, I guess I'm supposed to do a poem that I have to write between now and then for Violins of Hope, and that's on April 24th. And then, let's see, on April 29th, Marcia Gutierrez is going to be doing a Meet the Poet event. So there's a lot of really great things happening in poetry. Just look at your Gail Borden Library newsletter and you'll find out. And I guess Monday is our poetry writing group. First Monday of the month. I almost forgot. Take care. Thank you so much.
I'll be married.